You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Formed in 1995 on the Lower East Side of New York City, Brendan Brown, his brother, and a few friends created a unique sound all their own. Their debut single, Teenage Dirtbag, became a massive hit, spoke to a generation of geeky metalheads, and gave the band a full-time career overseas. This week, I'm joined by Roger Feeley-Lussier, a former member of the band's Appreciation Post in Yale, Massachusetts, to discuss if Wheatus rocks in Keds and Tube Socks.
About me, 'cause I'm just a teenage dirtbag, baby. Yeah, I'm just a teenage dirtbag, baby. Listen to Iron Maiden, baby. Will you be?
One hit is all you need to make the money guaranteed, and you can live off royalties forever. And it makes me wonder, is it just a blunder, or is it one hit thunder? Hey, Roger.
Hey, how's it going, man? What's up?
Good. You're here to talk about Wheatus.
Yeah, so we're talking about a band called Wheatus. How familiar are you with Wheatus?
I am actually super duper familiar with Wheatus. Actually, my band Punchline toured with Wheatus in the UK in like the year 2008-ish or so. Very well versed in Wheatus. We're here specifically, first off, to talk about Teenage Dirtbag, which is an absolute phenomenon of a song. The longevity of that song and its popularity is super impressive, because when you start a Facebook group about one-hit wonders for this podcast, you will not believe the amount of people that submit that song over and over again. And it's a pretty undeniable one-hit wonder. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, no, it's a big one, and it's a funny one because it falls very, very, very close to kind of a subsection of one-hit wonders, which is novelty songs. I'm gonna just I want to set a baseline here. So the reason I chose Wheatus and when Matt, your producer, reached out to me and he was like, "What do you think?" And I literally wasn't sure how many you'd taped, and I was like, "Is Wheatus taken? I want to do Teenage Dirtbag." And he was like, "Perfect." Wheatus was the first concert I ever drove to when I was 16
Nice.
and a half. They did a free concert in Providence at Lupo's, at Old Lupo's. Did you ever play at Old Lupo's?
We definitely played at a Lupo's, but I don't know if it was old or new Lupo's.
So in Providence, there's Lupo's, which was like the newer Lupo's, which was at a theater called the Strand, big theater with seating. You probably played there.
I think we played there on a Juliana Theory tour back in the day.
Old Lupo's was more like a warehouse space. And so it was literally the first like rock concert I'd ever been to, because I could finally drive myself to them. So I was up front the whole time. They played Teenage Dirtbag twice. They played it during the set, and then they played it in the encore. And this was their original lineup, which was four dudes. Brendan, the singer, the bassist, who I think was his brother, a drummer, and then another percussionist who played hand percussion and shakers and stuff.
Right. So
then in 2005, I guess it was, my band, The Appreciation Post, played with them. And at Middle East Downstairs in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And their lineup was already kind of different at this point. They already had like backup singers. Right. And I think one of the people had been switched out from that original, 6 years earlier band. So I think they were like third album at that point. And the thing I remember the most about them was they brought their own wireless sound system.
Yes, they did.
That they plugged in and they set up, and it was funny because my band was made up of people who were like really good friends with the like sound people at the Middle East, and so we were all there just hanging out for load in, obviously because we had already loaded in and stuff. And they wheel in this thing, and the sound guy's like, "Yo, what's this?" And they're like, "Oh, don't worry about it, we've got it." And he's like, "Are you sure?" And they're like, "Yeah, just like as soon as the band before us is done, just like go have a drink and we'll just set it up. And they were like, all right, man, whatever. And so it was this big box with wireless everything. And like I said, every single person had wireless everything. And it sounded great, oddly enough. And then they also did Teenage Dirtbag during the set and then once again and the encore. And then I saw them again maybe 2 years ago here in the Knitting Factory in Brooklyn. They, my friend's band, Math the Band, was opening for them. They also toured in Europe with them around the same time you did. They have now they have a 9-piece band with like 3 guitarists and everything's kind of like a soul song. So I have no idea what's happened, if I'm going to be completely honest. At some point, 99 to 2005, I understood all that. 2005 to 2020, I don't know. He seems like Brendan seems like he's very happy doing what he's doing. He's very active on Twitter. He's a funny guy on Twitter. So he seems to have figured something out. But I watched them perform and I was like, I have no concept of what this is. I
mean, yeah, the setting up their own sound system. I think that's cool. You know what you're getting into each night. Nothing's going to change. I mean, it seems like a lot of work, but if you're willing to put the work in and it sounds good, that's really cool. They're definitely unique. I don't think anybody else sounds like Wheatus, and I'm going to say this right off the bat, they're awesome people. Such nice, sweet people. So that is always a good thing to find out when someone has a massive hit and it achieves that kind of success. It's nice to know that the people are also really cool. As far as Teenage Dirtbag, that song, it is crazy to me to this day. I don't care if I'm at a party where it's mostly hip hop and dance music playing, or if I'm at a wedding, or if I'm at even a show and it's between bands. If that song comes on, people are singing along, people are happy, and it's just that the effect that song has on people. I haven't seen many songs have that effect on the people around me the way that one does.
You ever see someone do it at karaoke?
Oh my God, yes, of course.
That's a slam dunk.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the go-to, and that's so cool that I feel like at the time the song came out around 2000. I think that it was a mainstream massive hit. I think at the time I was a little bit too cool for it. I was a little bit too into punk music to be like, oh, this is cool. And then it just as the years passed by and you just hear the song, you're like, oh, this song's really cool. And it's definitely the vocals are crazy high. That's definitely a very noteworthy thing about it. It's fun to sing along to. It's got cool lyrics. It's just, I got no qualms with Teenage Dirtbag. A lot of songs we talk about on here, tend to maybe get onto what's bad about the songs, but I don't have any problem with Teenage Dirtbag.
What's a really good example of so I have when Rivers Cuomo released his solo demos anthologies, maybe between 2006 and 2011 or so. One of them came, if you got the deluxe edition, I'm a huge Weezer nerd. So if you got the deluxe edition, it came with a bound book of his notes from the Pinkerton sessions and a lot of arrangement notes and just sort of his thoughts and his diaries from when he got leg surgery and all this stuff. And one of the things he's talking about is how Say It Ain't So just always felt like such a perfect version of a perfect sing-along song. And what it was he was really trying to make Pixie's song, which is the soft verse, loud chorus thing. Right. And he was like, what's the way to do this? And he wrote Say It Ain't So, where the highest note of the chorus, that Say It Ain't So, was as high as he could possibly sing. And he knew that it was as high as most people his age who are going to be singing along to it would be able to sing. And it worked, and that's why it works. And that's the same thing that happens in Teenage Dirtbag. It's just sort of it's already pretty high, but then when that loud chorus comes in and the distortion gets on the guitar and it's got that little walk down guitar part, it's just so big and like raucous in comparison to that teeny tiny, very like quiet verse. And then what's funny is once you get really familiar with the lyrics, like I did when I was 16 and I bought the album and like wore it out driving around in my Mustang because I was that kid, like you realize that what it is, it's the juxtaposition where like the teeny tiny parts, he's actually being a really vicious asshole. And then in the big parts, he's calling himself out for it. So like, I don't know. It's just, it's a funny, like I said, almost novelty song. It's almost a comedy song, but it isn't.
Yeah. I when you first said that, I've been thinking about that since you said that, because novelty song, if it wasn't such a well written, like, yeah, you're talking about that structure, which, oh my God, how many songs where you have the soft verse and then the huge chorus it's just accentuated by the fact that the verse is so small, you know. It's so quiet. When I think novelty song, I think Aqua Barbie Girl, I think I think I'm Too Sexy, I think Baby Got Back, or all those kind of songs, whereas Teenage Dirtbag's actually like a rockin' rock song, so any novelty in it is just the fact of all of the feelings and memories attached to that time when that song was popular come rushing back. That's how I would feel as far as like the novelty part of that song.
So now here's a question, not to get too far off tangent, but it's fine. It's all the same. This is all the same soup. So you said Aqua Barbie Girl. So that band, as far as I know, existed before and existed after that song. They're Swedish or Norwegian or whatever, right?
Yeah, they're Swedish. Yeah.
Do you think there are Swedish people who loved Aqua just sort of as like a dance pop disco band who like sort of treat Barbie Girl as just sort of like an anomaly in their mind? And then they're like, well, at least I've still got these other like 7 albums of this.
Yeah, apparently it was actually our first episode. We did Aqua Barbie Girl, and so I actually am kind of knowledgeable on Aqua. They did have other hits in Sweden.
Yeah,
we got into like why on earth, like what drugs do you have to be on to really like this music, because it's all like Barbie Girl, you know, it's all that beat, it's all that like, you know, female vocal and then weird Sugar Cubes-ish other guy. I don't get the juxtaposition so much.
And then even beyond that, I mean, like look at Eiffel 65, right? Like literally the same. That was all the same year. I remember the like 1999, 2000 really well. I think that was like, you know, that was when I was 16, 17. That's kind of when I like blinked into sentience from like adolescence or something, because that's the moment from which all those albums that came out in that era are like so formative to my like personal experience, you know, Semisonic, Fastball, this, even like literally those albums that would have like Barbie Girl or like LFO, Girl on TV, or something, like all those like kind of like weird pop songs that happened at that time. And like, it's so strange. And I don't think that's going to really happen again. I mean, Old Town Road was sort of a novelty song, but then like you look at Lil Nas X and he's this whole completely separate sort of way to be a one-hit wonder. And then like he's also kind of now set up in a way where he's going to have a completely different trajectory than if that had happened in 1999.
Right. Yeah, because you can, you know, and Wheatus is a good example of this, and I brought it up about some other bands that I know. Like somebody had posted in the Facebook group for the podcast, had posted a Rusted Root, Send Me On My Way. And Rusted Root's actually from Pittsburgh. And one of the members of Rusted Root is in the group. And I was like, oh man, nobody said anything bad about it. It's a great song and they're a great band that's had this massive success for the longest time. But she commented on it like, yeah, we had a one-hit wonder. You know, after that we had 20 years of selling out arenas and stuff. So like there is a way to, you know, I would love to have one hit. You know, like
I did it for 9 years. I played, I mean, you've played far more shows than I have at this point, obviously. But like I played like 900 shows in 9 years and like damn near killed myself and had like a near psychotic break in Germany once. And like, I didn't even sniff a hit.
Yeah, right. So, it's not like we're talking shit on people for having one hit. And, if you can parlay that hit into a long career, because it's funny, we talk a lot about the bands that to us are in no way, shape, or form one-hit wonders. The Mighty Bosstones are in no way, shape, or form a one-hit wonder, but they kind of are, but you come from our world, and hell no, they're not a one-hit wonder, and hell no,
and then,
Jimmy Eat World isn't a one-hit wonder, and like all these like bands that did have this one massive song, but have had long-lasting success both before and after that. And I think if I ever get lucky to have that one hit, that's I would feel good about the fact that that I would know how to use that to just continue making music forever,
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy Eat World's one of my all-time favorite bands. Like, I just saw them. I've seen them twice in the past year. I've seen them. I saw them open for Third Eye Blind. If we're kind of speaking of this realm, I mean, Third Eye Blind are probably a 3-hit wonder. Jimmy Eat World's probably like a 1.5 hit wonder. Like,
yeah.
I would never speak ill of Jimmy Eat World. I love all their albums except one, and like I would see them. I'd pay any amount of money to see them for forever. But like I also understand from that show, from being at this big arena style show where they were opening for Third Eye Blind, and I don't know. Have you seen Third Eye Blind recently? Do you know anything about this?
I know that the drummer of Jimmy Eat World was not a fan. I don't know if you saw that controversy after the tour was over.
No, but I'm good. Godspeed. More power to him, because so Third Eye Blind is now, there's only 2 original members from it. It's Steven and the drummer, and the rest of the guys all quit or were fired or whatever. They all started another band called XEB, who they tour playing the Third Eye Blind songs that they wrote. And obviously Stephen Jenkins can still play all those songs, but it's so strange. He's like, he's like 52, right? Like no shade. That's no dig to him, but he is like 52. He's wearing like a cut off hoodie, like the sleeves cut off, and he's like skulking around stage, and there's like a big like light show, and he's still doing all the same sort of like in between dialogue stuff that he did when they were like pretty popular, like 2002, 2003. But like, it feels so just like an actor on stage, and it feels so not genuine. And they said like, at one point he announced that like some filmmaker is making a documentary about the song Motorcycle Drive-By. And he was like, so that's why there's so many cameras on stage. And then the whole time he's just like performing to the cameras. And it's like, oh my God, like I basically went there to see Jimmy Eat World. So like I was fine with it. But like he's become this like very negative experience to watch.
Right. That's Zach, the drummer of Jimmy Eat World. You can go back and look at his tweets about it. I was like, damn, he just came out and was like,
did he basically say that?
Oh, he straight up was ripped. I mean, it was like a big story that week. Like he was ripping, like basically called him an asshole, like a fake asshole, like straight up just came out and said it. And I was like, damn, that's pretty bold. I've had that experience once or twice too, but I kind of like kept it within my circle. I didn't just come out and tweet it.
And here's the thing. If I could feel that from 44 rows away, like imagine that from like 2 feet away.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I do think that they have a couple good songs. I was never a big fan. I always like found Third Eye Blind kind of like cheesy and like wasn't feeling it, but I could admit that like those songs were catchy, and I definitely knew a lot of people liked them.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to sort of actually pivot this back to Wheatus, sorry about that digression. It's on topic, right? We're talking about wonders. And to pivot that back to Wheatus, once again, I mean, Brendan must be almost 50 now. I just saw him a couple of years ago. Like I said, I didn't personally, like, I wasn't digging it, but like, he put together a thing, it had a solid vision, and the people that were there to see it all really liked it. So, like,
oh, hell yeah.
Cool.
Man.
Great. And to know from you that he's actually a nice guy, and my friend from Math the Band told me he's a nice guy, and like my buddies who've interacted with him on Twitter, like it seems like he's in a really good place, and I feel like that's the best possible outcome from being a one-hit wonder.
Right. And on top of that, Wheatus, nobody really sounds like Wheatus. They have such a unique sound. I mean, I want to talk about Teenage Dirtbag a little bit more before we get deeper into their catalog. But the crazy thing when I look at these facts here about Teenage Dirtbag is it only hit number 124 on the US Billboard charts. It was used to as a tie-in with like a Jason Biggs movie.
Well, that's the music video. That's a funny part too.
Right. But it was a massive hit in the UK. It hit number 2 in the UK, which I didn't even realize that fact until right now. And so it's pretty cool. Wheatus let us tour with them in the UK. That's pretty badass. I mean, I thought it was badass anyway.
That's where they definitely make their most money, which good for them. Like, once again, if he's figured out a way to keep doing this and make himself happy and keep writing songs and buying cool guitars that he gets to play out, I'm happy for him.
Oh yeah, man. It's what it's all about, being able to parlay that success, and but what the point being that like that still blows my mind. It only hit number 124. Like, it seemed like such a big song, but I think that like over the years there's been this like cult growing of that song. I'm thinking just the drummer and Punchline Corey got married on New Year's Eve. When that song came on at the reception, it was like everybody's like, oh yeah, like it was. And it's not, what, coming back to like the novelty aspect, it's not like anybody's listening and singing along as like, oh, this silly song from 2000. It's like people love it. And
yeah, and
really cool.
It's just because it's so simple and like you remember it instantly. And I think once, not to skip too far ahead, but listening to the album again, I remembered how, I don't know how to say it, how digi everything is, how sort of like direct into the board and how like deliberately like everything's so tight and like ticky-tacky. And on the other songs, they really suffer for it. But on Teenage Dirtbag, it just like, it fits in this really perfect pocket where there's one just wretched thing about the recording. And I wonder if you'll agree with me on this, but it's the DJ scratches. Oh,
I think that maybe that's a little bit of a product of the time. Like, yeah. I would love to hear like what they would say about that now, but that was such a popular thing to do out of nowhere at that like late 90s, 2000, whatever. That was like a staple. It's funny you say that. I didn't even really think about that, but yeah, I could do without the record scratches.
Yeah. Everything else about it, because you've got, and it's so funny. When you toured with them, at that point, was he playing like the semi-hollow body guitar, the Gibson? Do you remember? The big red so. Gibson.
Yeah.
Because when I saw them in '99, he was still playing just with an acoustic guitar with the pickup in the sound hole, like beat up old Yamaha whatever guitar covered in stickers, and like through like a board of like the crummiest pedals you've ever heard. And right. I remember being 16 and just looking at me like, this was the coolest thing I've ever seen. Yeah. And I want to say in 2005, he might've still been playing with an acoustic, but then, like I said, when I saw them a couple of years ago, he was up to the
now you say, I can't remember actually, that whole time of my life is kind of a blur, but
totally get it.
Right.
So, but when you listen to the record, it's that's what they're doing. It's an acoustic guitar. It's direct into the board, and then when it gets to a distortion, it's just someone in the studio hit a pedal with their hand, and it's so deliberate, and it's so, you can hear the seams of the digital recording in the entire thing, and it feels so incredibly 1999, 2000, and like it makes it so instantly recognizable.
But before we get any deeper, I also want to talk about this because I think this is really interesting. When you listen to the lyrics of the song and you kind of like it tells a story. You know, he's a teenage dirtbag, and then he meets this this other teenage dirtbag. It's like a really cute, nice story. But I want to read this quote from Brendan about the origins of the chorus of the song. He said, and I'm sure you might already know this, but he said, it came from the summer of 1984 when I was 10 years old. That summer in the woods behind my house, there was a satanic, drug-induced ritual teen homicide that went down. And the kid who did it was called Ricky Casso, and he was arrested wearing an AC/DC t-shirt. That made all the papers and the television, obviously. And here I was, 10 years old, walking around with a case full of AC/DC and Iron Maiden and Metallica songs, and all the parents and teachers and cops thought I was some kind of Satan worshiper. So that's the backdrop for the song, which I think is really cool, funny, awesome backstory.
Yeah, that's crazy. And it's really funny because, you know, even like this song, he's, you know, it veers into the almost incel-y, like gross stuff. And we'll talk about this when we talk about the rest of the album, where it goes a little further into it. But what's funny about this one is, you know, the comedic reveal in the third act is the girl is actually into him and likes the same stuff. And he's just been making up this false reality about the boyfriend even existing and being, you know, wanting to, like, whatever, call the cops on him because he brings a gun to school or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? Like, right. That one resolves with, oh yeah, it actually turns out, bad on me, it turns out she actually liked me. But then in the rest of the album, there's just some really gross stuff that, like, does not age as well.
Hi, podcast listeners. I'm Carol Costello, a former CNN anchor and national correspondent. This January, I'm launching a podcast about one of the first cases I ever covered as a journalist. It's one that stuck with me all of these years, the one that buried itself under my skin and stayed put. It's a true crime series about an amazing woman named Phyllis Cottle, who defied torture and death and brought a fierce rage to the quest to find her attacker. Carol Costello Presents Blind Rage. It's a production of Evergreen Podcasts and signature title of the Killer Podcast Network. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Discover more great true crime and paranormal programming at killerpodcast.com.
Hi, this is Krista Makes, host of Krista Makes a Podcast. The theme of the podcast is songwriting. Each week, my musical guest picks a defining song from their career to discuss, critique, and analyze during the show. So please join me for some fun and insight into some of the greatest songs ever written and recorded. Listen and subscribe at soundtalentmedia.com.
Right.
So
hey, well, hey,
that's probably why it ended up being a one-hit wonder from at least that album.
Can we talk about the fact that when they play this song on the radio, they censor out the word gun?
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that?
And sometimes dick as well. The version of the album that is on Spotify has gun censored out, but the entire album is censored. I couldn't find a non-censored version. Maybe I didn't look hard enough, but maybe I have some weird setting on my Spotify. Maybe they think I'm 14 or something, because I do actually listen to a lot of pop music. So
yeah, me too.
it's probably it's like, oh, we've noticed you've been listening to a lot of Ariana Grande lately, so we're gonna make sure that this Wheatus album doesn't have any swears in it.
Something we like to bring up on here as well is, like, what else was going on in the world at that time when the song was popular? Because when you look at Teenage Dirtbag, so if you're looking at it without that little bit of perspective of what else is going on, it might make it even cooler that this song became popular when you realize that year, the album in the year 2000, some of the things that were really popular, these are like looking at the top 10 albums, it's like number one was NSYNC, No Strings Attached. Oops, I Did It Again, Britney Spears was popular. Human Clay from Creed. Supernatural from Santana, which, I mean, dude, how is Santana real? How much? I don't know. Far be it from me to talk shit on Santana, but who out there is listening to Santana? I guess moms in the year 2000.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like,
I mean, it won what, 7 Grammys?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not trying to drag Santana here, but the point being, like, I don't really want to listen to Santana. It might just be me. But top singles at that time, Oops, I Did It Again, U2's Beautiful Day, Bon Jovi, It's My Life. I don't know. I'll take Teenage Dirtbag over any of that.
Like I said, it really does come down to just the rest of the album. Once again, I have a fear, and I do fear that Brendan will listen to this, simply because I know he is, like I said, he's active on Twitter, and I really don't want him to think I'm dragging him. I just personally, I didn't feel that the rest of the album aged very well. I'm glad he has 20 years of music after it. One of the songs, Hump 'Em and Dump 'Em, has like a Clinton drag, and he like talks about Monica Lewinsky, and you're like, eek. It gave me pause. It gave me like, it's one of those things that like you reevaluate the way that you listened to things, or like things that like pop culture that you took in when you were a teenager. I don't think he's that guy. I think he's doing it.
No.
He's singing songs where there's characters being portrayed that he's voicing. I'm not saying that's what he is or how he feels or what he believes, but like it's the kind of humor that was fine then and is probably not now.
Right. Hey man, it's crazy. It was only in the past, I feel bad even saying this, but I feel like it's only in the past year or so where even I could look back and be like, oh, wait a second. The whole like talking shit on Monica Lewinsky thing was fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, why did she get the brunt of all the jokes and all the, like, she was on Dax Shepard's podcast recently, and we listened to her story, and like, you're like, whoa, wait a second. She was honestly the most bullied person maybe of all time. Why? She was forced into even talking about that. She was tricked and forced. There was a really good podcast about the whole deal with that. It was on Slate. It sucks. Like, she was the most bullied, and still to this day, people, unless you think about it critically, like, yeah, talk shit on Bill Clinton about it. Like, he took advantage of a young intern at the time, but she is not the person who should have been completely, like, her life. If she wasn't a strong person, she could have very easily taken a really bad turn. I mean, she does talk about a lot of the bad things that happened in her life, but in the end, she came out, stronger and a good person or whatever,
Yeah.
But she could have very easily like killed herself through all that. Like, she was the most bullied person ever. So yeah, that's an interesting thing to think about. And another interesting thing to think about is all the music that we listen to that, yeah, does not age well, especially in the 90s, 2000s, like stuff that you didn't even think twice about.
Yep.
But then you look back on it and you're like, oh, damn.
And a lot of it just comes back to, and it's that humor thing. And it's, I'm not trying to be quote unquote woke. I'm not trying to be like, it's just sort of like at a bare minimum now, you kind of have to look at these things and say like, at very least. And like, like I said, once again, he was clearly writing these songs in the voice of characters. And like, that's a very interesting thing to do. Max from Say Anything writes songs in the voice of characters, like, and that can lead to problematic readings of things 10, 20, 30 years down the line. And, this podcast probably isn't enough space for us to even discuss kind of the breadth of that and sort of like a songwriter or someone making media or art anyway. So,
and I think that all you can do is evolve with the times and be aware that maybe something that you sang or that you wrote a while ago, as long as you're aware, because I know people that like can't get past, like I said this thing in the 90s and it was okay then. Why isn't it okay now? Well, it's not okay now because like we've evolved as a human species and we realize that like, saying retard isn't cool anymore.
No, like, exactly. Or even you look at Haley from Paramore a couple of years ago wrote an apology about the lyrics to Misery Business because they're like, they play into the like girl on girl, anyone who's not me is a slut, like negative sexuality sort of thing that like, first of all, when she wrote the song, when she was 18, was the way that and like it's not excusable. It's bad that it happened, and it's bad that it ever happened, and that it was happening. But like that was kind of the mainstream way that even a young woman would express her own frustration with that. And
Right.
for her to have acknowledged that, like, hey, I'm sorry if I created art that sort of gave you a negative perception of what you are, who you could be. And I thought that was pretty interesting to see.
Yeah, to be able to look back in that sort of mature way at things you have written, because hey, I'm guilty of it too. There are things that make me cringe, like early in Punchline's catalog and stuff, where I'm like, oh man, like just like, you know, we came from a world like there's no getting around it. It's pretty, when you look at the lyrics, there was like a lot of misogyny going on, and not proud of it, and wouldn't do that again. And I don't think the Punchline was especially bad culprit of it, like,
but a lot of bands in the scene at the time were, and it was about
yes
it was about being part of the existing zeitgeist or whatever. That's probably too lofty of a way to describe it, but like it's just like sometimes it was being played for like tongue-in-cheek humor, and like in ways that we now realize are like, eek, yeah.
Right. People can listen to things just like people can watch things in the wrong way, if you know what I mean. Like you could watch a movie like,
how are you reading Joker? Are you saying,
right,
I want to be the guy who whatever does the things that happen in that movie? Like, are you reading? Are you rooting for Cobra Kai? Like,
right. Yeah. Are you watching Natural Born Killers and being like, oh, this is a fucked up reflection of America? Or are you watching it like, oh man, these characters are badass? Like that's, you know, that's the sort of thing. And listening to music, it could be that same way, because you could be a writer and write a book or a song or whatever from a perspective that it just depends on how it's taken in. And,
yeah.
you know, someone could watch Borat and not realize the satire of it and be like, oh, he's making fun of foreign people, and like think that that's it, and just laugh at it in the wrong way, if that makes sense. And
no, I know what you mean. It's people taking the wrong, or I mean, it's watching Fight Club and not seeing it as a satire of what's happening on screen, despite the fact that, like, whatever you want to say about the politics being espoused in it, but like the way that it's about like bringing around supposedly positive change through like the most toxic means possible. Right. And, you know, if you come out of that saying, ah, shit, I got to go start my own fight club and start beating dudes up, you're saying, oh wait, I'm asking the wrong questions.
Right. Absolutely. So I think that, bringing this back to Wheatus, especially knowing them as people, I don't think that, and knowing that, like, if you follow Brendan on Twitter or anything like that, he is as woke and as progressive of a person as you and I, or maybe even more so. So, like, I don't think that I think that anything that he wrote was from a perspective telling a story, and anything that may have not have aged well, he would realize, hey, this didn't age so well, and I realized that, you know, just as I can do that and you can do that.
Exactly. And that's why I'm trying, like, you know, in discussing, I'm trying to approach it from that place. I'm trying, you know, because he's not here to be in the discussion, and I do earnestly believe that I'm reading this correctly, where it's just kind of cringe. It's not like eek or yikes.
Right. Eminem released a new song yesterday or the day before from when we're recording this, in a new music video. And I'm not an Eminem fan. Like, I respect him as a rapper and everything, but you want to talk about cringeworthy, like, early stuff, like, Jesus,
it's hard to listen to.
Oh man, like that Kim song, if you're familiar with that, like, it just, like, you know, and I would, you know, glorifying murder, rape, violence, all this stuff, like, really bad. It's really, really bad.
To kind of backtrack this into the one-hit wonder conversation, Eminem has had, what, 9 hits, 10 hits? So like, he's the kind of guy who his first song sort of was a novelty song, the My Name Is song, and every album he released would have another like novelty song on it, and then the rest of his albums would be I don't know if you remember this, it would always be like, here's a song that sounds like clown music,
right,
and then like every other song on the album was like hardcore Dr. Dre rap, and it was a real Trojan horse, I guess, that they were doing, and like whatever it was like perfectly timed and perfectly existed that he wasn't a one-hit wonder off that, because like I don't necessarily know if at any point earlier or later in music he would have been. Right. But yeah, it's good that he has this platform now and that he's using it and he understands like, yo, I gotta like, if people are gonna listen to my stupid voice, it should be for good. Right. And I mean, that's what I do respect. And like, you know, like you said, if you're gonna get mad at Eminem, that like someone who would, I'm not saying I'm defending him, but if you were going to be someone that could defend him, I think an argument that could be made would be like, hey, if you're going to get mad at Eminem for these, like you put it, like these 3-act plays that he made back then that are very cringeworthy, couldn't you also say the same thing about Quentin Tarantino or like whatever, writing these like violent, you know, sometimes racist, sometimes whatever things, but they, you know, it's what. But I think the difference is maybe Eminem, when you write a song, they're like, he's writing in first person and about real people in his life. So then it seems like, oh, wait a second, this isn't fake. He's writing about himself, and I think that could get misconstrued. And that's a whole long conveation. But you know, and then once again, to bring it back around to Teenage Dirtbag, which is, you know, the reason we're here. The wonderful thing about it from a writing standpoint is that it does have that third act punchline. Sorry, no pun intended. That third act gag where it turns out he's constructed this whole false reality around his pursuit and perceived lack of being what the girl wanted, and she is the one who actually comes to him and says, let's go be dirtbags together. And it's like, you know, it's a wonderful little thing, because like, does that character deserve the payoff? Who knows? But he gets it. Well, maybe we really need Teenage Dirtbag right now, because I never really thought about this before, but you said it a few times, like the incels, like maybe they need to hear this song and be like, oh, there is hope, and I don't need to you know, take the gun to school and things like that. There's no reason for me to sit and let this stew. Maybe if I just sort of present myself in a positive way, positive things can happen for me in my life. Right, for sure. So, you know, we talked about it a little bit, like, but digging deeper into Wheatus's catalog, which is part of what we do on the podcast, like they have this one song that is just like my favorite Wheatus song. It's called Lemonade. I don't know if you're familiar with this song. I think I remember a music video for it. That was probably around 2007 or 2008, right? Yeah. I believe it was when we toured with them. I believe it was the record that they were touring off of. All records get, especially nowadays, they get all mixed up for me because you just stream songs instead of albums a lot of times. But Lemonade's the jam.
Just tell me his name. Just tell me you didn't get laid in our bedroom, and was it the same? Just tell me if his dick is bigger than mine. Do you remember the way it was when I was home before I left you all alone? Now I'm 80 on the porch drinking lemonade with you, and that is all that I can think about when you tell me that you cheated. 80 on the porch drinking lemonade with you, and that is all that I can think about when you tell me that you cheated on me. I knew that you would.
Once again, it's funny that in this song, which is such a cool song, the chorus of it being like in a very high vocal, it's I wanna be 80 lay on the porch drinking lemonade with you, and that is all I can think about when you tell me that you're cheating. But once again, the verses are, he mentions his dick, talks about blowjobs, all this. It's really impressive to me when you can have that sort of stuff in the song, yet the song is still really good.
if you can construct a melody, the words can kind of be anything. It sounds like a negative. It sounds like I'm being cynical. I'm looking at the lyrics. They're very funny. They're also very 2007, 2008. I love it.
Right. Yeah. It's a really awesome song. And once again, like Wheatus in general, I don't know what their writing dynamic is. I kind of think is Brendan, but I have to believe that it's a group effort to some extent.
Here's kind of a funny thing. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just on Google, and it says that album, so it was released, the songwriter copyright on that song, Sony ATV Music Publishing, Ultra Tunes, which I have to imagine is Brendan's LLC, and then Capital Christian Music Group. So this is a Christian song.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I remember they had like a label dispute thing going on. I can't remember what the details.
Sony was the Suck Phony thing.
Suck Phony, that's right.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I just think that's that's one of those weird like quirks of the music industry that song was published under a Christian music label.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, man, I do in general. I think it's inspiring and motivating to me when bands and artists do their own thing, don't sound like anyone else, and achieve success. Like, I don't think, maybe Teenage Dirtbag is a little formulaic or whatever, but in general, I think that like Wheatus isn't trying to sound like anyone. And I think that's like one of those reasons, like all of my favorite artists, like Ween, they might be Giants, Ben Folds, Björk, all these people like that did their own thing and don't sound like anyone else, and achieved massive, long-lasting success. That's always a really cool thing, and I think Wheatus is one of those artists, and I got mad respect.
Yeah, and a big part of it is Brendan's voice is so specific. It's really amazing. I mean, especially nowadays, it's amazing to listen to that song, and like the vocals are doubled, tripled sometimes, maybe even quadrupled. And this is, it was recorded in 99 or early 2000. And this is like, there wasn't auto-tune. There wasn't a ways of fixing that. That was, he went into the studio and he sang those parts 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. And then they sat down with the producer and they picked the best ones and made sure everything lined up right. And, obviously from being in the studio, that's a hard thing to do. And, his voice live is phenomenal in the same way. So he knows exactly what Brendan O'Brien brings to Wheatus, and why Wheatus needs Brendan O'Brien, and why he writes his songs that way. And that's a pretty hard thing to do.
For sure. And
sorry, did I say, is it Brendan O'Brien? Have I been calling him, is that the wrong, I feel Brendan Brown. I'm sorry, man. Yeah. If you've been listening, that sucks. I had the Wikipedia page open and I said O'Brien instead of Brown. Well,
it's all good.
Hopefully, like I said, I feel pretty confident he's going to listen to this, and I hope I didn't say anything that bummed him out too much.
No, I don't think that.
I'm a fan.
I don't think. Right. Me too. And I don't think if I listened to this podcast and somebody was talking about as in depth and talking about the things that we were talking about Punchline, I would be like, oh, that was cool. They're super, super honest, but they also like me.
Yeah. Once again, Brendan, if you listened, or if any of Brendan's fans listened, I apologize for saying your last name wrong multiple times across the last 45 minutes.
Yeah. But anyway, hey, this has been really fun talking to you, man.
Yeah, this has been good. I think I ended up, like I said, I listened to the album. I ended up not enjoying it as much as I remember enjoying it when I was 16, 17. And that's kind of just what happens with things sometimes. But the fact of the matter is, the song Teenage Dirtbag, It's good. It's great. It's like you said, it's everything you said. It's a party starter. It's something that people, I imagine you and I are roughly the same age. I'm 36.
Yeah, 39. So we're close.
Yeah, we're the same age. We experienced the same things at the same time, roughly. People our age all experienced this at the same time, even though it only got to number 100 on the Billboard charts or whatever. It was such a stamp on like our era. It's the same as Semi-Charmed Life, which I think was like 96. So like that was probably the first of this sort of like pop music as guitar rock as crossover alt hits. And this was definitely part of that. And I think that that's something that especially people like us who then ended up going into liking punk music, emo music, even like metalcore, like things like that kind of blew up in from like 99 to 2009. We all sort of had that. And that's just something that like people who were 12 to 20 at that point in time had in common. And that's why it's such a great like thing to have as a unifier for our generation, I guess.
Yeah. And this song, I really believe it's not going anywhere. Just seeing it even in 2020, people just like reacting to it, just seeing people react to the song with excitement in the year 2020, it makes me believe that this song is going to be around when it's 2040 and 2050. People are still going to be enjoying this song because it's 20 years since the release, and I can only see more excitement about this song being played now. So, yeah, man, it must be pretty cool to have a hit like that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And once again, more power to him that they've been able, or that he's been able to kind of continue with this as an entity, as a thing in his life. And like I said, when I saw him a couple of years ago, it seemed like he really radiated a positive presence on stage, and I was very happy for him.
Hell yeah, man. So, hey, before we go here, you played in the appreciation post, which hasn't been a band since, or has been on hiatus since?
I left the band in 2009. I think that they released an album. Actually, I don't want to like make this go too long, but we recorded a full length with Mark McCluskey, who I know you know.
Nice.
Hell
yeah.
It came out really awesome. But then I got this opportunity to join another band, and I left the appreciation post. They ended up releasing that, I think at first, as 2 separate EPs, and I think that's up on Spotify. And then there's probably another EP that I didn't play on, but it's really fantastic. Check that out, the appreciation post. I had the other band I joined was called Pretty and Nice. We released a couple albums, did a bunch of tours. Once again, sort of it flamed out. Now I work in advertising. And I had another band that had some stuff on Spotify called Yale, Massachusetts, more of a pop punk type band. I sang and played guitar on that one. And basically, right now I'm working in advertising and just sort of living a life where I don't have to worry about sleeping on floors and booking shows.
Nice.
And honestly, it's pretty great. I'm glad y'all still have what y'all have. That's pretty much it. If I can drop a quick plug, if anyone who's listening to this can follow me on Twitter, that's sort of where I do most of my stuff now.
Nice.
A lot of, if you thought that things I said on this were insightful, I kind of try to do things like that, but it's also the opposite of that. So,
Nice.
check it out. I think that they'll probably post it in the like podcast notes for it. It's I am the Rog, IAMTHEROG. On Twitter, follow me and say hi, say that you listen to the podcast, say that you enjoyed it. Also, you should follow Chris and the podcast, I'm sure.
Hell yeah, man. So cool, man. It was great having you on. I feel like we're on the same wavelength. If we lived closer to each other, we'd probably hang out with each other.
Yeah, man. If you ever swing through New York, hit me up.
Hell yeah, man. We'll do.
Just kind of in conclusion, it's cool to have things that you used to listen to that maybe don't resonate the same way with you. It's totally fine if you still like it too. It's not my problem. Just do what you got to do.
Hell yeah, man.
All right.
Good.
Thanks a lot.
All right, dude. Thanks for doing this.
If you think that I don't notice, you're not looking me in the eye, and you're blind, and I don't have the time to sit here and wonder just what's under your skin tonight.
This has been One Hit Thunder. One Hit Thunder is produced by Matt Kelly as part of the Geekscape Network and hosted by Chris Fafalios of the bands Punchline, Pack, and Another Cheetah. You can hear Punchline's song Heart Transplant off their major label debut Action playing under me right now. Follow this week's guest on Twitter at IamTheRaj, and check out his new band, New Restaurants, at newrestaurants.bandcamp.com or in the links in our show notes, along with all of our social media tags. Punchline will be playing Anti-Fest on March 28th in Pittsburgh, featuring Anti-Flag, Suicide Machines, and many other great bands. Visit punchlion.com for tickets, as well as news, merch, and other upcoming tour dates. Let us know your thoughts on the show by emailing us at onehitthunderpodcast@gmail.com, and make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting app. We'll be back next week with another episode of One Hit Thunder.
As much as it does to me, I don't want you. I'm knowing that you and I used to. When you kiss me, when you want me, what did I do? What did I say? What did I do? What did I say to make you forget?
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.
Hey there, I am Johnny Christ from Avenged Sevenfold, and I've got a podcast called Drinks with Johnny you're going to want to check out. I sit down with a bunch of different people from all different walks of life, from professional wrestlers to actors, comedians, fighters, musicians, everything in between. I'm just looking to make some friends and have a good time doing it. So if that sounds like something you're into, go check out Drinks with Johnny, streaming everywhere now.
What's up, everybody? I am Finn McKenty, host of the Punk Rock NBA podcast, part of the Sound Talent Media Podcast Network. My podcast is all about doing what you love for a living, and every week I sit down and talk to people who have done exactly that. For example, musicians like Tommy from Between the Buried and Me, Matt from Periphery, Lil Lotus and Shinigami, among many others. Photographers, artists, designers, YouTubers like Glenn Fricker and Sarah Dici, and I unpack exactly how they got to where they are today with the goal of helping you do the same. So if that sounds cool, you can listen and subscribe at soundtalentmedia.com, and I'll see you there.